Sup, y'all? It's me. It's your boy Asmongold, and today I want to talk to you guys about some new information that was found that has led to a lot of speculation about what might be one of the new expansion's big features. That big feature is Subraces. Now, this is something that people have wanted for a very, very long time, and recently it's been data mined. There are 4 new Subraces that are in the game that people believe might be playable in the next expansion. Now, are these going to be the only 4 that are available? That are going to come out in the expansion? Probably not, but we never know. So the 4 that were data mined were Lightforged Draenei, which are probably going to be some variant of Draenei that we're going to be seeing in Argus right now. There was also the Nightborn, which are obviously, the Nightborn that you've seen all over Suramar, and also the High Mountain Tauren, and the last one is Void Elves. And Void Elves are probably going to be some level of iteration of what we saw Ilaria turn into at the end of the Seat of the Triumvirate. So, if it's not kind of obvious already what the Subraces are probably going to be, they're going to be extra features and extra customization options inside each race. So, if you choose to be like a Tauren, for example, there would be another feature and another option that you could choose to be a High Mountain Tauren, which would have different markings and, I guess, like tattoos, as well as maybe different facial features and a couple of other extra things, maybe a totem on its back or something like that. Now, I consider this to be a very, very highly probable option that they're going to be going with in the next expansion. And the reason, there's a number of reasons, but some of the big reasons are, number one, people have wanted this forever. Like, everybody has always wanted to be like a Dark Iron Dwarf or like an Amani Troll or something like that. And I'll talk about some of the possibilities that this might actually lead into after I talk about the pros and cons of it. And on top of that, it's really fucking easy for Blizzard to do, right? I mean, like, literally all they have to do is just change the color of a dwarf, add some blue shit on its shoulders or some gray shit on its shoulders, and suddenly now it's a dark iron dwarf or a wild hammer dwarf, and everybody's thrilled, everybody's happy, it's easy. So here's what I think that they should do. I think that they should make, how we have the class order hall quests right now, what they should do in the next expansion, they should make those the race quests, right? So like you go and you kind of like earn the trust or earn, I guess, like the ability to make like one of these sub races, and after you're able to do that, then you're able to make a new character, and it can be like a wild hammer dwarf or like the options that they have here, like a void elf or a nightborn or one of the lightforged Draenei. And so not only does that get people to do the content, but here's the main thing, and here's why I think Blizzard's going to do it, is that gets people to pay for race changes. And I think that's a pretty big defining factor and a pretty big driving factor on why this might actually happen. I think a lot of people would be really hyped to do that, and myself included. It'd be kind of cool to have like a wild hammer dwarf or something like that for my shaman. I would really like to do that, and it kind of gets people to do something, and also it doesn't require them to completely retool every single different armor set in the entire game to fit something like an ogre or like a saber stalker or an Arakoa, which are like races that people wanted to see in the game. For me personally, I would love to see ogres in the game, but let's be honest, it's a whole lot easier to make wild hammer dwarves and dark iron dwarves and probably a dozen other different variants than just make one completely new race, because you have to retool every single different weapon and item in the game. It's like you're going to have to retool like Nax 40 gear, like misplaced servo arm or corrupted Ashbringer or Maul of the Redeemed Crusader or something like that to fit in like an ogre's hand, right? But if you're just changing basically the color of a character and you're still keeping the base skeleton, it makes it much easier to do. So I'm really hoping that Blizzard does take advantage of this. Now, in a lot of ways, people could be a little bit disappointed because sub-races are not necessarily content in the game, which is why I would really hope that Blizzard adds corresponding quest lines to where it allows you to flesh out those different storylines of the races, of those sub-races, and get a better idea of what they're all about. And I think the best way to, get an understanding of this is with the troll sub-races. And the troll sub-races, it's a layout, right? You've got the Faraki trolls, you've got the Amani trolls, the Gurabashi trolls, and the Amani trolls, right? And you had the ZF, right, from the Faraki, ZG, Gurabashi, ZA, Amani, and I forgot the last one, but there's basically 4 different trolls, and the reason I know is because I've done Hordon. And the main point that I'm trying to get at is that so you would go to those different troll areas and kind of learn more about the lore of those trolls, and maybe at the end of that quest line, however long it takes, you would earn the ability to create a character of that subrace. I think that would be really, really cool, and it would add a whole nother level of depth to the game, and it would also allow them to draw on previous lore in the game with like like Thessarian and all of the Dark Iron Dwarves and Blackrock depths, etc. And I'd really love to see that. It'd be amazing. So I did want to talk to you guys about some options and subraces that I'd like to see, and possible subraces that we will see in the game, right? So humans, I think obviously humans would probably be Vicryl, right? Which were the kind of like the more primordial humans that we saw in Northrend. Dwarves are again more of a layup. You've got the Dark Iron Dwarves that we see in Blackrock Depths, and then the Wildhammer Dwarves that we see in Twilight Highlands. Those are very, very obvious, and they also have a lot of lore corresponding to them with like Faustet Wildhammer, and then also the Saurians, etc. Gnomes are a little bit more complicated. Maybe we could see something like Cyborg or Mecha Gnomes. I don't really know how that would entirely work. Or we could also see something like the Leper Gnomes in Gnomergen. Not really sure, but I think that'd be interesting. Night Elves, of course, you have the Nightborn. I believe, if I remember right, the Nightborn were actually data mined to be part of the Horde, which I don't really, honestly, like, I skipped through most of the actual storyline in the Suramar quest, so I don't really know if that entirely makes sense or not, but from what I'm reading, it kind of does. So we'll see what's going to happen. In terms of the Draenei, obviously you're going to have the Lightforged Draenei if that's going to happen. You could also have the Red Draenei, the Sargerite Draenei. I don't know what would happen after Argus, if that would make sense in terms of the lore, but it would be cool to maybe have a Red Draenei and then maybe the Broken, but I think that would require a completely different skeleton. So we'll have to see. The Draenei ones, probably the ones from Argus, would be the most obvious ones, obviously, because they are in the files already. Apparently, Wargren, you've got, Wargren are basically for furries, right? So you could maybe do the Saber Stalkers that we see in, like, Spires of Arak or something. So, like, if you want to, pretend to be, like, a dog furry, some people like to be cats, too. And so, like, they can be a cat, right? Or you could just turn a Wargren into, like, a dog, and it could just, like, bark or something. But anyway, I'm not really sure about Wargren. I don't care a whole lot. Pandaren, I was actually thinking about this, and, like, what would really be a good subrace for Pandaren? I think Tuskar would be a really, really good subrace. They'd fit the Pandaren skeleton really well. And they're both fat, so I think it's perfect. It would maybe I'd actually play a Pandaren if I was able to do that. The Tuskar are like the fat walrus guys from Northrend, by the way, and I always thought they were really cool. It'd be neat to have a little a subrace of them as well. For orcs, obviously you'd have like the fell orcs, you'd have like the shattered hand orcs, maybe the basically the red ones, the gray ones, and the brown ones. And all of those could be options. The trolls, the Imani, Faraki, Zandalari, Gurabashi, all of those different trolls, the different tribes, etc. Tauren, you could have the Tonka, and then also the High Mountain Tauren with like the different... the Tonka were like more, again, the primordial type Tauren that we saw in Northrend, and the High Mountain Tauren are obviously the ones we see in High Mountain. Undead, I don't really know what they could do. I think like the more of like a scourge, like a straight skeleton would work, but maybe not, because I know that like the China, like the way that they show undead in the China version of the game is very different, because you're not allowed to show bones or something. So I'm not really sure if they'd actually do that because of the complications there. But I don't know what they could do with undead. I think maybe some variant of Nathanos Blightcaller, where like kind of like the recently deceased undead, where they're kind of like still like mostly their human body. I think that'd be really cool. And so they could be kind of just basically humans but undead. I don't know if that would happen, but we'll see. Blood elves, you could have high elves. I don't really know how much of that would be going on. Honestly, it kind of depends on what's going to happen in the next expansion. And goblins, you have the Gelblins, which are basically just goblins. Goblins don't really have a ton of subraces, unfortunately. But the point that I'm trying to get at here, guys, is that the whole idea of it is really cool. I think it's very good, and also it's a way for them to explore, existing content, like as I said, the different troll tribes, the Dark Iron Dwarves, etc., and flesh that out more. And I think that's going to mean a lot for older players to understand that in a more fundamental and a deeper way. And also for new players, it's going to give them options to play different types of characters. I know that in many MMOs now, whenever you take it into consideration, in many MMOs, like you have these 50 different sliders of different things that you can do with your character's nose. And wow, it's like you've got maybe like total like 150 different combinations that you can do, probably more than that. But compared to other MMOs, the amount of customization that you have in WoW in terms of your characters, like facial structure and what it looks like, is very minimal. So I think subraces are a pretty good possibility to see. I'd be curious to hear what your what you think there would be a subrace of, what you'd like to see a subrace of. Personally, of all of these, which one would I probably want to see the most? I know this would probably be a big surprise, but I'd like to see Tuskar for Pandaren. I think that'd be kind of cool. But I really think in terms of a lore perspective, I'd really like to see the Dwarven subraces and the Troll subraces explored a lot more. And I would love to see that. It'd be very easy for Blizzard to implement, and hopefully they can do it in the next expansion. And I think everybody would really enjoy it a lot. So I just wanted to talk about the idea. I think it's very, very probable that it's going to happen. And I guess next week, or sometimes next week, it's really soon, whenever BlizzCon is happening. It's within the next 2 weeks. I should know because I'm actually going to be there. Yeah, I probably should know that. But anyway, I guess we'll find out soon. Anyway, guys, I just wanted to make a video and talk about it. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts, but that's pretty much all I've got. So thank you very much for watching, and like, comment, and subscribe.